Now, to our top story this morning, the Chancellor will deliver her much-anticipated spending review in just a few hours' time.
In a speech at Brighton's GMB conference yesterday, she claimed the spending review will be about making working people better off by investing in growth.
This government is going for growth because that is the best way to create jobs, boost wages, lift people out of poverty and sustainably fund our schools and our hospitals and all the public services we rely on. And we're doing things differently.
Well, what we do know is that today she's going to set out new budgets for the NHS, for police, for other public services, while sectors including infrastructure will benefit from a £113 billion boost. Other departments can expect cuts despite the efforts of ministers lobbying on their behalf.
Well, the spending review will carry Labour to the next general election, making it even more crucial for the Chancellor. Well, joining us now in the studio is Deputy Editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers. Good to see you this morning, Fraser.
Good morning.
And who are you predicting the winners and the losers are going to be?
Well, the definite winners are going to be health and defence. We know that they're basically protected, but it will be interesting to see how much of a boost they get, because that will tell us how big of a squeeze all of the other departments get. So probably some of the losers might be education, might be culture, for instance. Rachel Reeves obviously wants to use this as a chance to essentially rebrand herself a bit. She's been seen as a little bit miserly. She's taken away our winter fuel payments. She's put taxes up, all of those things. This is her chance to spend, to say that these are, the government's priorities, and she will say that these are your priorities too. That remains to be seen, I think.
She's going to try and sell a story of renewal, isn't she? How likely do you think that will be? I mean, there's talk of a reshuffle, isn't there, this summer? Do you think her job could be on the line, or do you think this really is an opportunity for her?
I think that Keir Starmer is probably behind her. I think that, but partly because he doesn't really understand economics. So they've always been, she's always been bound together in the sort of Keir Starmer project. I think her job is a bit more secure than it might have been a few months ago. But let's see how the spending review goes. I mean, she will be saying, in terms of renewal, she will be making the argument that I think very wrong-headed argument, that they've fixed the foundations of the economy, that the public finances are all on a better footing. That's something to look out for, because it is complete nonsense.
We talk about the figures that will be announced today taking us into the next election. What a lot of nonsense. They'll change these, they will adapt these as we go along, and no one will ever remember in 2 years' time that these are the figures that she quoted today.
And we've seen, already, the government making U-turns on things like winter fuel payment. The next time they make an unpopular decision, I'm sure that'll be U-turned on as well. And it's going to be difficult for Rachel Reeves in particular, because she has sold herself as this kind of iron chancellor, and immediately has folded on what she said was a key issue. You had members of the Labour cabinet saying, if we don't cut winter fuel allowance, there will be a run on the pound.
Yeah.
And now they're saying, well, we're bringing it back because the economy's improved. Well, the economy hasn't improved.
No, it hasn't.
Unemployment's up.
Yeah.
Inflation is up. Borrowing costs are up.
So many fibs, so many things masking the truth. The nuclear power station yesterday, they were talking about, apparently it's impossible to build it because it needs a massive amount of private funding, private investment funding from pensions and whatever around the world. So they can re-announce their intention, which was yesterday, but they're nowhere near to being able to press a button and say this will happen.
Well, that's precisely one of the big problems. They've announced £14 billion of funding, but that's not all it's going to cost. This nuclear plant, which does need to be built. We do need more nuclear energy in this country. But it's been announced by successive governments. People will probably remember Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak announcing that Sizewell C is going to be built. Many of the people have criticised Rachel Reeves for basically talking about some of the bus, tram and train infrastructure. A lot of that was actually announced under the last government. Not much of it particularly new. It'd be interesting to see. One thing that might be new, however, is a connection between Liverpool and Manchester, so people should look out for that, whether that is approved.
It is also going to open up talk about tax rises, isn't it, in the autumn? And that's going to run up pretty much until the autumn from today. Yeah,
because what's being spent today is essentially on the back of the budget that we already had partly on the budget we already had in the autumn, and then we'll have another budget in autumn. And, the borrowing is massive. We're borrowing £150 billion a year, and much of that is to cover day-to-day spending, not for capital projects, which would make sense. And even Rachel Reeves keeps missing her, fiscal targets, her fiscal rules. So it seems inevitable that if she wants to stick to those, that either taxes will go up or spending will go down. And the spending review, they're going to raise spending by 1.2% in real terms every year. So it's going to be the only logical alternative is raising taxes, despite us already having the highest tax burden since the Second World War.
Don't they realise this just bores the backside of people? Just do things, get it done. Stop talking about what you may do or may not do, or we're going to cut winter fuel allowances, or we're going to bring them back. Oh, it was always our intention to bring them back. Oh, the economy's recovered. It's just lie after lie after lie.
And the great delusion is that I think many in Labour genuinely think that this spending review, that no one's going to watch the speech because, and if you did turn it on, you'll listen to Rachel Reeves and you'll switch off. They genuinely think that this is going to win people back from reform. I think that, I think they're in people.
Dream on, you're thinking.
Dream on. I mean, people have made a judgment on this Labour government. They've seen that things are not working. They've seen that the change that's been promised is not happening, and I think they've probably blown their chance today. Spending.
Well, let's see how all of that adds up. Michael Simmons beside me here. Good to see you again, Michael. Michael is the economics editor from The Spectator. What do you think about any hand that Rachel Reeves has to deal here?
Well, I think the big question with the plan she'll set out today for the next 3 or 4 years is actually how many months they even last at all, because she thinks she's found this extra money for borrowing she's allowed to do on infrastructure and from tinkering around with her day-to-day spending, but it's all based on the assumption that the economy keeps growing sort of as well as it has in the last couple of months. But there's a lot of evidence now to suggest that's not going to be the case for the rest of the year. We saw terrible jobs figures yesterday, of 100,000 jobs lost in a month. And I think if that turns out into weaker growth, if the sort of international borrowing costs stay high, then we might find ourselves come the autumn budget that all this money she promises today, she can't actually deliver. So it's, how long do these plans actually last?
Michael, I'm just sort of scratching my head here, and you did talk about those job figures yesterday, and the unemployment figure went up. Is she responsible for that, or is it the market's responsible for that?
I think on the jobs figures yesterday, it's specifically to do with decisions of the Chancellor. This is because of the £25 billion increase to employers' national insurance and then also the rise in the minimum wage. I mean, I think it's just basic economics. If you make it more expensive to hire people, then what are businesses going to do? They're going to stop replacing people when they leave and they're going to stop creating new jobs.
Fraser, is there hope to be found in the dozens of infrastructure projects that Michael's just been speaking about there, in the sense that there could be thousands of jobs to be had?
Well, all of these infrastructure announcements, I think, are very positive. Our infrastructure is crumbling, so there's been lots announced on nuclear energy, transport. The question is, how quickly will they come into fruition? We still haven't seen the planning reforms that might make some of these infrastructure projects a bit less expensive and a bit quicker to approve. But many of these announcements are reheated. So many of the transport announcements were made under the Conservative government. Sizewell C, it's good to see that's getting more money, but again, that was announced by previous governments. So that's the question: is how quickly can these projects come to fruition? They're all very positive. That's what people want to see. It's what we need, and that will boost growth. But will they even emerge in this Parliament? Is a obvious question.
And also, Michael, I'm sure tomorrow the headlines are going to focus on cuts, and then there'll be talks about potential tax rises to come in the autumn. Do you think we should be expecting that?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. I mean, the Chancellor and the Prime Minister have kept ruling out that they're not going to increase, national insurance again and income tax again. But ultimately, this headroom against the self-imposed rules that she gives herself is so slim that any change to borrowing costs or any change to GDP forecasts means that's going to get even slimmer. And then come autumn, she's going to have to decide, Does she undo what she does today and do more cuts, or does she raise taxes elsewhere? It's hard to think, where you squeeze extra money if you're not looking at personal taxes. So I'm totally baffled by this. She seems to keep removing options and ruling things out, which is something I don't think she has to do and seems kind of unsensible and politically dangerous.
And is there enough money, Fraser, in terms of the government's manifesto pledges? I mean, the front page of the Times today is talking about the NHS, which we've said is going to be one of the big winners later on today, but saying even with that extra 30 billion, it's not going to be enough to tackle waiting lists.
Yeah, there's not going to be enough to tackle waiting lists. On the education front, that's another manifesto pledge that's going to be broken because it's not enough teachers, there's not enough money to hire the teachers that were promised. So there's going to be all kinds of promises broken as a result.
Police numbers?
Police numbers again. Police have been some of the biggest, making some of the loudest noises against the spending review or in anticipation of the spending review. And it is going to feel for a lot of people like austerity light, because even though we are technically spending a lot more money, borrowing a lot more money, so much money is going on additional borrowing costs and on additional wages for public sector workers. So that money might not necessarily translate into a better feeling for people or into more efficient services, and that's what people are going to notice.
Michael, the health service always gets me, is that great dilemma. Doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, it's a bottomless pit and you'll never get any thanks for sorting it out. I mean, people don't want to see patients in corridors. There's certain things that you could superficially say, well, let's not have that. That's not going to happen anymore. But as regards making any sort of indent into people's health and way of life, forget it.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's totally hopeless. And in a way, I feel sorry for the government on this, because the NHS is our national religion now. You cannot do any serious reform to it because there would be riots. Even with all this investment that it's had over the years, record amounts of money going into it. There's this horrible study recently that showed even with hiring, more consultants and more doctors, productivity within the health service actually went flat. So it seems that nothing changes. But just because it's such a visible thing, the government cannot have footage of people in corridors. It will just always soak up this money. It's going to get 60% of the cash announced today.
Well, look, lots for you to get your teeth into when you come back after 8 o'clock. Fraser, thank you very much indeed as well.